I'm really curious from your perspective, based on this conversation, how do you create an emotional moment for the customer? And I'm sure that even that is nuanced and complicated, but like
if you look at like a company like Rapha, now let's say if I just break down just the photography. Now, the photography, again, if we go back to that point that people look at the world as it relates to them. So when you see this beautiful photography that Rapha has done, or that Airbnb example that we were talking about, how did photography all of a sudden change and start getting them those bookings? It's because now you had clear, clean pictures of that environment and you could see yourself in that environment. So for Airbnb, you could see yourself, sitting on that couch or laying in that bed, and it looked like comfortable and clean. And you could see that clearly. And so the decision-making, that trust and credibility happened intuitively, and analytically, the price afterwards seemed good, right? Now, in Rapha's case, when you look at like beautiful photography, you see these guys and girls cycling in the Alps between snow and the rain. You imagine yourself. So they capture all those little subtle things that a real cyclist experiences in their photographs. It's like being one with yourself, having solitude and free with your thoughts, that escape. So they depict that in their photographs. So they're not just mindless photographs. When you look at a certain photograph, you're like, wow, it's amazing. But then you relate to it from the lens of, okay, I remember that time when I was writing like this, or I see myself writing like this. Through photography, for example, you're creating relatability, you're creating context, you're creating that emotion experience. A lot of it is unsaid. It's like, I'll give you an example. This is such a beautiful example, which is, I think this is like the creative head of Wolf Ollins giving this talk. And he basically describes that don't tell people there's a red ball. Tell them the merits of the color red, and then tell them the merits of a circle or a globe or the earth. So if I'm talking to you about the color red and earth, in your mind, you already have the image of a red ball. With visual design and branding, you're kind of doing that. You don't want to tell people everything. You want them to imagine it and let their inner voice tell them, because that is more believable, because I didn't say it. You said it to yourself in your brain. That's very good branding, is that you're not saying anything. You're giving people the context and enough evidence, and let them paint the picture in their own brain and let their inner voice tell them what the story is.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. And actually, as you were talking about that, tell me if you disagree. But the other company that comes to mind immediately that does this really well is Nike. Because Nike is running. Running is Nike. And I know you could argue that there's Puma and Adidas and whatever.
Yeah.
But at least in North America, Nike is running.
Yeah. They've made themselves synonymous with running, but I think it's more than just running. It's about, again, it's like, if you think about all the communication that they do, the advertising, the photography, it's all about, the grit, the hard work, the sweat, the glory, the guts. They depict that through the tone, the voice, the imagery, the motion of like films and everything. So you're actually experiencing that. So analytically, you're like, they are giving you, okay, this is made out of this thing, it has like the most latest rubber or synthetic or whatever that thing is. So they're giving you a little bit of analytical information, but that emotional hook is so strong.
You're right. And I did Nike a disservice, because Nike never presents themselves. Nike never talks about their products, ever. Never, ever. They don't even really talk about running. Nike is just sport. That's a very broad statement. And I remember I listened to on Audible, I listened to Shoe Dog. I don't know if you've listened to it or read it.
No, not yet. Oh my God. Welcome to the podcast.
It's on? No? Get out.
That cat looks like it doesn't give a fuck.
No, it doesn't. He doesn't care. He doesn't care at all.
Poor guy. Right. So you're talking about Nike.
So Nike, but so if you haven't read it, I actually suggest reading Shoe Dog, which is like the story of Nike.
Phil Knight.
But yeah, Phil Knight's sort of memoir about Nike. The story itself is fantastic.
Yeah.
But I'm remembering now that there's a chunk in it that actually talks about Nike as a brand. Late in the book, where they're really worried about like getting away from just being a shoe company, and they become something much larger than that.
Yeah.
And I think that, as I'm connecting the dots here and what you're saying is they never talk about a product. They always talk about how you feel.
Yeah.
The experience you'll have. Right.
Yeah.
And then you naturally just connect, wanting to experience the world in that way, or wanting to feel that way. And then it's natural to be like, well, Nike sells a thing that lets me kind of do that. Right. So.
Exactly. So they're attaching themselves to that feeling. So it's like, whenever you get that feeling, you want Nikes. It's like brilliant.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. And then, that really helps, because again, the way that you're explaining it and the way that I'm sort of like now looking at these companies, especially the ones that I'm picking stand out, right? They stand out from their peers. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.